Greetings, Questers. So here we are today to try to go into introduction to the game type editor. There's been a number of requests from people to actually describe how the game type editor works and how you can get into it to create your own custom game systems. And I'm going to try to do that today. There might be points in this where it seems a little bit rambling or long. And I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum, but there's a lot to go over, and I'd rather actually kind of walk you through an example of building a character sheet for a system so that you can kind of understand the basic ideas and get a handle on things. And hopefully that will be a really good start for being able to actually look into it yourself. And there will be some caveats that, there might be some bugs that I run into. I try to keep it as functional as possible all the time, but because it's a constant work in progress, I introduce bugs all the time, and I go back and try to fix them as quickly as I can. But there will be some things that might not work exactly perfectly, so it's a little bit more on the advanced side. So let's get started. I'm going to try to create this slag toad, essentially this character sheet, the NPC character sheet for Mythcraft, which is another system that I'm currently working on adding support for. And so with monsters, they tend to be a more lightweight version of a character sheet, as they're trying to condense a lot of the rules into a smaller form. And so this will be an easier example because we can just kind of throw together the sheet quickly. Now, there's a couple of steps that we want to get into about how do you get to the character sheet editor or to the game type editor? How does it actually work? And so I'll start off there. Anytime you create a brand new game, you have your game settings. And under there's this game type picker. And in here, you can pick any number of different various games that are available. This is on our dev server, so you might see games that aren't available elsewhere. And you'll want to actually look at what you have in on the production servers to see the real list of full game support. Now, there's two buttons that exist right next to it, and one is edit game type, which is what we'll use to edit the existing game type and how we're going to manage that. Then there's the new one, which you can use this to very quickly just click on this. It will use the currently selected game type as the base template, and it will make a copy of this. And then you can simply just type in the name. Maybe you're going to make a custom version, and you can just name it whatever you want. And so you can have a custom version of the Mythcraft game type. And just hitting create will bring you right into the editor, just as if you hit the edit button. So we don't need to go through that. So if I go to edit the game type, it will bring me into the editor proper. Now, there's a lot of buttons and a lot of little doohickeys that are going to potentially overwhelm new people, and I'm trying to minimize that as best I can, but it's a little difficult because this is really kind of the bread and butter of how Questline works. So there's a lot of detail. You can get into the weeds here and find a lot of options and settings and tweak things and make things the way that you want to play them. So I'm going to simply start with an overview of the entire interface here, and it's kind of broken down into 5 major sections here. We have the main toolbar up above. We have the current sheets and components list here on the left. We have the 2 main editors, the sheet editor and the tooltip editor. Then we have the property editors, which are for anything that is currently selected. So if I have my component, it will automatically switch between all the different options that I have. I can also go to the properties of the sheet itself. There's not a lot of options here, so we don't need to go into it too much. And then the game type properties itself, which are the global settings for the entire game type. So let's move on. I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about the toolbar. And the toolbar is how you add components and things to your active sheets, just simply by clicking these buttons. So let's talk about the main bar up here. This is your close button. We'll just go right back to whatever game you were in and exit this. Your save button, which whenever you start making changes, that will become enabled, and you can just click save at any time to save your stuff. I do not implement an autosave system for this, as I feel it's important that you want to expressly save when you want to. So make sure you're trying to do that pretty often. And the reason for that is because anytime you make changes to this, those changes, the next time any person that uses your game type refreshes a game, it will immediately get all those changes. I do have plans for in the future to implement essentially what I would call a publishing system, where you can actually make changes and have a whole draft of all the changes that you plan on doing, and then you can publish that so that if you're working on game types for multiple people who actually use your game system, you'll be able to publish that in a way so that it doesn't affect people until you decide to publish it. That's not implemented yet, and that's something I plan on doing in the future. But if you wish to do something like that and you wish to work on game systems, you can actually use our development server, and you can create the game type in the development server, modify it to your heart's content, test it, verify it, go through all those processes, and then you can copy it, which is another option, and you'll be able to paste it into the production environment, which is kind of a handy tool. So we'll go talk about the copy component. This will take whatever your currently selected component is, and we'll copy it to the clipboard, and then you can paste that component inside of any other sheet that you want to. So you can make quick copies of it. If you want to make a duplicate of the component, you can actually select something like this attributes component, and I can say duplicate, and it will create an exact duplicate right on the same sheet, and make it easy for me to make multiple copies of that component as I'm working on stuff. Next is this copy active sheet. What it will do is it will literally copy the entire sheet, and will give that all of that information into the clipboard, which then I can paste it to another sheet. So if I wanted to make a copy of the player sheet, I could do that very quickly by just saying copy and then add a new sheet and then paste it into the new sheet, and I can start from there. It's very useful when you're using games like Blades in the Dark that actually use playbooks, and you have pretty much the same statistics and everything, except some minor changes or tweaks per sheet, and so you can do that very easily. Then there's the copy game type button, which will copy the entire game type to the clipboard, and from there you can actually just paste it into a new one. So if you want to view an existing game type as well, you can go load that up. You can copy it and you can paste it, and this is how you can do this with the dev server as well. You copy the game type from the dev server, go into the production version, paste the game type, and it will overwrite it. The only caveat to that is that the game type properties itself, it will change the name to say whatever the name is with copy, much like this, which you'll want to make sure you edit appropriately, and it will actually set the privacy to private, so that you can so you don't accidentally share something you don't want to share. And then the final option is what's called show grid, and this will just actually show the grid of all of the components on the current page, or on the current sheet. Now, this menu option on the left actually has the current sheets. You can select between the different sheets very easily. And then all of the different components, you can select them here just as if you're selecting them on the sheet themselves. And you'll see them as you start adding components. It'll continually add them. And the same thing with the tooltip editor. You can actually see the different components that you're going to modify here. Now, let's talk about the different properties. The game type properties themselves are broken down into a couple of major sections here. Obviously the name and the notes, which is really the description of what this is, and the privacy level. Who has access to this. If it's private, you're the only person that can see this. Otherwise, you set it public, and anyone can make this game type the game type for their game. Then we choose a dice bag, and I'll go into dice bags a little bit more in depth in a second. And there's a bunch of them, and this will get expanded over time. You have a journal theme, and we have these journal themes currently. We plan on adding plenty more for that. And then the encounter style, you have the different types of encounters, so that this is the style that the game's going to follow. You can change this individually per encounter if you wish, but this is the basic default for it. Your map scale options have things like, what does 1 square on the map mean? And in this case, if you're to do like D&D 5th edition, you'd say, every square is 5 feet. But in Mythcraft, it's the same. So you go through this and you can set this up to customize this. This can also be customized per map as well. Then there's the diagonal calc type. So some systems use, the double every other calculation, which exists. You can do a flat value, which is just straight. You move 1 square, left, right, up, down, doesn't matter. And then there's exact, which is useful for things like war games and stuff like that, like Warhammer 40K, because then you can actually set a specific value. Now, role options, this request target label, this is kind of a defunct option. You don't need to worry about it for now. There is a role request system that will be re-implemented in Questline at some point, and this will have a direct tie into that. Now you have your item options. You have the different item types that are available for various games that are pretty useful. I plan on actually improving this greatly. This is going to be a whole custom system here where you're actually going to be able to set the custom item options so that you can define that inside your game type directly. Rather than having to pick a type, you'll be able to set up all kinds of custom properties and stuff for items, and that'll make it a lot easier for you to manipulate that. Then there's encumbrance type. And encumbrance type is a basic, simple system of does it have a weight, or are you picking slots? And those are the two main systems I see so far. And we'll increase that as well, or add new options for that as well as time goes on. Then there's damage types. Damage types are, a lot of game systems have like different damage types for weapons or attacks, fire damage or necrotic or anything like that. You can add these as you want, and as you do so, these will become available in your actions based on your dice bag. And then you have a currency section, and currencies are what is the breakdown of your currencies. In most D&D games, it's you have copper and silver and electrum and gold and platinum. And they all have a breakdown how much they're worth to each of them. And you can create all of them as you see fit. Then, specifically in the component properties, as I go through the example, I will talk about each of the components and how they affect, how all the different properties affect each of the components themselves. And there are a ton of options and a ton of properties. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of the specific details how everything works. I'm more going to create a sheet so that you can kind of see how it works. And you'll have to kind of play with some of these things. And at any time you come to our Discord server and have a conversation with us, and we can explain certain things or try to help you find different solutions for what you're trying to accomplish. But there are a lot of options, so I can't explain them all just in a simple video. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to stop this video, and I'll create a part 2 of this so that it'll be easier to come back to the actual example of me building a sheet. So thanks for stopping by, and keep questing.